right, let's talk about the news. You know, we're recording this on a Friday. It's the middle of August. 2 days ago, we had a national holiday on the Wednesday. Josh, Dave, I will give you all the money I have on me right now if you can tell me what that holiday was. Why did we have the day off?
Well, actually,
It's the Feast of the Saint of the Ascension.
The Feast of the what?
The Ascension.
Assumption.
Assumption. That's the one.
Well, that's the assumption that most people make.
Oh, boom.
But actually...
Whose assumption? Who's Ascension/assumption?
I have no idea, man. I just jumped in there. I thought I knew the answer. But
It's the Assumption of the Holy Spirit. It is a religious thing. But interestingly, in one article I read that apparently it's National Army Day, and it's all about the kind of...
there was a military parade on the TV.
There was. There was one in Warsaw as well.
You know, I'm pretty sure this holiday, this August 15th holiday, I think it's a fairly recent thing, along with the Three Kings holiday in January, the other day where people pretend to be religious to get the day off. Dave, what do you think about people who are not religious at all but get Catholic holidays off?
Well, everyone gets the holiday.
You got a problem with that?
No, absolutely not. No.
No?
I get the holiday.
So you were happy to take it, weren't you?
I think it's a sacred right to honour this the Assumption of the Ascension or whatever the hell it's called, and I think we should all take more days off.
More holidays are good.
It's an immaculate assumption, I think.
Yes, as long as they're paid holidays. Go Catholicism.
So we're in like week 3 or 4 of this massive heat wave that's been beating us down. You have enough? You have enough of the heat? Sweating?
I've had enough of the heat.
Yeah, I'm ready for the freezing snow to come back.
Actually.
You all right? Really? Well, interesting bit in the news this week related to the heat. The city government is on the hot seat, so to speak, for their rules regarding the horses and carriages in the Rinnick. There is a cutoff point. I forgot what it was. I should have looked it up before we started recording. But there's a cutoff point. If the temperature goes over a certain point, let's say it's about 35, I think, that the carriages have to clear out of the Rinnick. But people are saying even that is too hot. It should be much lower. Do you feel bad or guilty when you pass by those poor horses standing and suffering in the heat in the Rinnick?
I don't walk by them that often. I used to, though, and I often thought that, yes, they should be out of heat, that people don't need to have a horse and carriage ride around the main square. You can circumnavigate in about 5 minutes. And that the smell of piss is actually the worst thing every summer, no matter how hot it is. If you go anywhere near the trough that runs below...
Yeah, it is a trough too, isn't it?
It smells of horse piss. It's not pleasant.
Josh, what do you think?
Oh, I think more or less exactly the same as Dave, really.
So, there must be...
Go animals, though, as well. We support
animals.
Coolness when it comes to all mammals.
And the ascension and assumption of horses as well. We like that, too. What do you, there must be something of the opposite in the winter. There must be a minimum temperature for letting them stand in the cold. I don't know what.
Maybe a minimum quantity of potential customers.
Yeah, that's true too. I don't know. Is it cruel? Is this an anachronism? Is it just in a general sense? Is this kind of like the equivalent of making killer whales perform for audiences?
Well, that type of horse was bred for its toughness, wasn't it? So I wonder if it would look back at its ancestors' workload and think that looked like a real day,
that's a tough gig, isn't it? Like taking people around a level, smooth surface.
I mean, come on,
So your message is, come on, suck it up, horse.
Well, look, I already agree. Nobody should be made to stand outside when it's that hot, including horses. But every other day of the year, suck it up.
But just more generally,
gotta go to work.
More generally, forgetting about the heat for a second. Forget about the heat. Just what do you think about the idea of a visitor to a city being carted around in this horse and carriage like some victorious Roman emperor?
You mean, what do I mean about the exact thing I just told you?
No. I mean, just the idea of it. Is it okay? Forget about the animal cruelty aspect, the heat aspect. Just is it a dick thing to do? Basically,
no.
I mean, if you were in a city that was predominantly canals and you kind of were willing to pay a lot of money to be paddled around the city by some dumb animal in a striped T-shirt.
An Italian, in other words, right? Is that what you mean?
A gondolier,
Or on thin ice.
Did you have a bad experience on a gondola, Josh, in the 70s?
I've only ever watched them. But rather like the horses and carriages in the Rinnick, I've thought kind of, okay, if you want to spend the money, if it's your wedding day, I can justify that, why not,
Yeah, I don't get it. To walk to the other side of the Rinnick, for example.
But I don't spend a lot of time in the Rinnick. I don't spend any time at all observing people in horses and carriages. But if you see a beautiful bride and a groom in their finery trotting around in a white carriage with horses, that kind of, there's nothing offensive to the eye about that. But if you see like a bunch of blokes in t-shirts and tracky bottoms, kind of, it's just not right, is it?
I don't think I've ever seen that. I mean, yeah, I think they do a harmless trade. I don't know what your big problem is.
So what's
John.
our bottom line here? We're pro-horse.
You were pro everything.
We're anti-suffering and pro-horse. We're really taking a courageous stand.
We're definitely anti-heat wave. I'll tell you that much. It's been a little bit cooler the last couple of days. Keep it up, weather.
This crap, absolutely. Moving on to something else that caught our eye in the news this week, and we're really opening ourselves up to some cruel jokes here. Dunkin Donuts announced that for the second time in their recent history, they're leaving the Polish market. I think the first time was about 2001 or 2000. They disappeared. Came back about 3 years ago. All their locations in Warsaw, as far as I know. And apparently the math is just not adding up, and they're leaving. Do we care?
Well, I've never had access to a Dunkin Donuts while I was here. I would care if there was one near me, of course. It's a wonderful, wonderful franchise. I fell upon one of tears of joy when I seen it in a train station in Berlin a couple of years ago on a stag party. Oh my God. Boston creams, baby.
Oh, they're the best. Boston creams rule. They totally rule.
Good coffee too. Yeah, I'm sad about their demise. Didn't know they existed, to be honest with you. It must be a couple of little boutique outlets in Warsaw.
They were
and
around the train station. It was, I think, did they try to position themselves as like, coffee first, donuts second, even though, it's in the name? I mean,
see, coffee takes time to make, and that's the problem. But their coffee was always good. There's lots of Dunkin' Donuts, still floating around the place.
Josh,
they can't even spell donut right. So, it's a non-starter for me.
It was a bit traumatizing. We lost the Dunkin' Donuts in our local shopping centre when I was about 15,
Here's what gets me.
Didn't drink coffee then, but I love donuts.
If you read the comments online, stories about this, the reader comments, they're all kind of rejoicing with snark and sarcasm. Basically, the idea is that Dunkin' Donuts had to run out of the country with their tail between their legs because Polish pączki are just that awesome and just that amazing. And this is clear, indisputable proof that the world loves pączkis first and Dunkin' Donuts second. So loser, get out of town. That's the idea.
Well, I'm going to speak up here as someone who has no interest or kind of fondness for donuts whatsoever. But it seems to me that the basic Polish pączki is indeed a decent confection if you like that kind of thing. But if you stand in line, as seems to be the kind of the national custom for one of these things, when you get to the counter, you basically there's a choice of one. Whereas, as I understand it, with your Dunkin Donuts or whatever the correct pronunciation is, you get to there's a huge choice. Of,
massive
pink,
selection,
blue,
yes.
chocolatey, sprinkly.
You fill a box with...
none of them appeal to me whatsoever, but at least there's a choice, and I do believe in the idea of choice. So, I don't know.
Inspiring stuff, Josh. I'll tell you something, Dunkin' Donuts donuts are amazing. And a lot better than your standard pączki. But pączki's a lot cheaper, And I will say overall, they've got a good baking game over here in Poland. I mean, they got good confections, as Josh so beautifully put it. So overall, I'm very happy with the standard of cake I can purchase for about $4 or $5. You can get a nice slice of, double caramel brownie.
I think I just realized that I might be a little bit biased in this because the very first time I ever came to Poland as a tourist, this is more years ago than I care to admit, it was here in Krakow, and I remember being in a store. This is the middle of the summer, and I saw one of those little trays. The pączkis are, they just put the tray on the counter, and you pick
Did
up.
Did you have hair?
It was covered in flies and bees.
Oh, but going back to my question,
turned me off.
Did you have hair back then?
Did I have hair back then? Boy,
what did it look like?
Long and flowing, down to my knees. I was like Ian Gillan, circa 1972.
Oh, Papa Homer.
Right. But, the elephant in the room to me, as someone who knows nothing about donuts, is Krispy Kreme. Are they not the...
They are also excellent, but they're a bit of a Dunkin' Donuts rip-off, quite frankly.
Dave, I will not stand for any bad words about Krispy Kreme.
No, they are excellent. I said the word excellent. Okay. But in my eyes, growing up, I had Krispy Kreme came along a lot later,
I think that's a North American thing and a airport here and there. Airports in Britain. Is it in Dublin Airport?
It's in, where I was sampling them, where I remember in London, a lot of the convenience Tesco's have Krispy Kreme stands. And
so they're not in Ireland at all?
They are now, but I wouldn't like to pretend that they were ubiquitous during my
Krispy Kreme
childhood.
is just paradise.
Okay, so are we informing our Polish listeners about
Some news.
the donut world?
Give us a final word on donuts, guys.
The
Dunkin'
eulogy
Donuts.
to Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
Who cares? There was only like 2 or 3 of them, wasn't there?
So
on Zakopianka, like, you know.
well, here in Krakow there were I think 3. Around in Warsaw there were a few more, but it's I don't know.
Okay, bye-bye. Like we said goodbye to
nobody
Wendy's
cares.
in London.
Oh well. But is this proof that Polish pączki are the best thing ever?
Oh,
Yes, absolutely.
scientifically.
So if that's the case, then
Wonderful confection. I
then
love that.
how is Starbucks so successful? Starbucks sells overpriced coffee. Poland had coffee before Starbucks came here. So how, if Starbucks is successful, that must mean that their coffee is objectively better than Polish coffee.
I interrupt. Is Starbucks successful here? I mean, I know that there are Starbucks in, you know, prime locations here in the last, 2, 3, 4 years.
I haven't seen their financial report.
No, right. And I mean, you know, there's enough tourists here that people who don't know from Shinola will probably see a Starbucks and think, okay, well, I don't know what Polish coffee is like, but I know what I get in a Starbucks. I mean, we know that Starbucks coffee is...
Let me settle this.
Correct.
Let me
I have
settle
to point
this.
an
Let me settle
accusatory
this,
finger at
Josh.
Dave. I think he's a Starbucks drinker.
Let me settle this, Josh. John, do you drink coffee?
Not at all.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, the ignorance is astonishing, but understandable.
Yeah, but
Won't stop me from having an opinion on coffee, though.
Josh loves coffee, okay? And I like coffee too. And what he will tell you, I'm sure he'll back me up here, is that it's actually true in the case of coffee that every little bar, cafe, restaurant in Poland does decent coffee. You know, man, they take a lot of pride in that, and you're wrong on every level about coffee in Poland. And they also have
So
enough
I'm wrong
love for
when
coffee.
I say what, that it's bad? I never said
Well,
it was bad.
the chains don't dominate over here. The branches aren't everywhere, but they are visible.
I don't
They
know
are
about
around
that.
the place.
You had your Costa coffee.
Let
your
me
Starbucks,
finish.
That's everybody.
Costa is only the number one because it bought out Coffee Heaven, which was a Polish franchise. Now, look, you know, the fact of the matter is, when you're working in an office and you go out for a coffee, you bring it back and you want it to last a while. That's why people like Starbucks and they like Costa, because the portions are huge, you know. Yeah, a nice big bucket of coffee, man, you're buzzing after. So if it fills a certain fuel-like need, why Monster energy drinks, etc., are so popular. But there's no doubt you can get a decent coffee in any bar in Krakow.
Yeah.
We're going to transition from the caffeine-boosted energy of coffee to the 180 degrees in the other direction. Let's talk about the European courts. Try not to fall asleep here. Now, Dave, I want to toss this over to you because you know more about this than I do. It's one of those stories that under the radar, and I think most people are happy to leave it under the radar, but it's actually really important and really significant. Tell us what's going on.
Well, the ENCJ's board has said the Polish National Judiciary Council, the KRS, which appoints judges and represents Poland at the ENCJ, is no longer an institution which is independent of the executive and guarantees the final responsibility for the support of the judiciary in the independent delivery of justice. So,
Can we go back to talking about coffee?
yeah. So, to summarize, they've set a date next September 17th where they're going to possibly kick Poland out of the ENCJ, which is something I'm not sure. I need to know more on what their chances of succeeding are. But it's another step on the road of ratcheting up the pressure on Poland.
But this is all part of the steady drumbeat on the idea that somehow democracy is threatened in the courts.
Yeah, the court is the big the court's the big issue.
Et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah, basically the EU are trying to rein in and get a reversal. I would say is reasonable.
So democracy is threatened because whoever is the democratically elected political party has the power to appoint judges.
Yeah, it's something we're going to come back to.
Yes, I'm just dropping that in there as a
little teaser. We've challenged Josh to gather some data on how some of the other major European nations appoint their judges. Have a little comparison. As we've covered before on the show, this is a complicated little bag of potatoes, and we don't want to mislead our listeners in any way, shape, or form. But it is important to keep the updates coming because, as John says, it's becoming a steady drumbeat, and you don't want to miss the signals because it's important stuff, I think.
Yeah, it's weird how you see stories that come out of the various
It's not sexy. Like,
various
this
arms
story,
and
you know.
limbs of Brussels, and you think, oh, who cares? But it's really significant, important stuff. But very few people can be bothered to really learn what's going on and what's at stake.
Well, I think, like a lot of people, I like to think it's brinksmanship which will sort itself out around the negotiation tables, and we'll start to see a block of Germany, France, and Poland emerge harmonious and moving forward with issues rather than arguing about.
Yeah,
Less
I mean, there's a
important
kind of
things.
an irony in that we're seeing kind of like endless politicking about the politicisation of the judiciary. It's like a political point.
Well,
Yeah.
Bottom line is, at the moment, we're not in danger of being kicked out of the EU.
I don't think so, no, but it's important to keep a track of it because, it is a major issue.
Well, we will definitely be waiting anxiously for any updates from the ENCJ, was it?
Yeah, and CJ.
What does that stand for? European something Court of Justice?
Yeah,
What's the N?
the European Network
Ooh.
of Councils for the Judiciaries.
Well, I like my version better. Mm-hmm. The European Network for the Council of the Judiciaries?
Yeah, that's what I just said.
That's ENC. Oh, okay.
ENCJ.
Our new favorite European Union. Or is it EU? Is it like
It's
separate or part of the EU?
It's the representative body of all the different judiciaries who have a board, and the board has put a motion forward that Poland is no longer independent from the legislature.
It may not be actually strictly as part of the European Union. It might be connected with the European Court of Human Rights.
It is an organisation,
which is an independent organisation separate from the.
it is an organisation made up of the judiciaries of the European Union
Okay.
states.
So there we go.
Trying to imagine what the ENCJ Christmas party looks like.
Lively, I'd say, man.
Yeah.
Well, you only attend if you're appointed, presumably.
Yeah. Nice salaries in,
We're going to
Brussels.
wrap up on a couple of notes about football. A couple of interesting things this week in the world of football. Just yesterday, news of a complete, utter, total. That's my pen dropping on the floor. Complete, total
Free sound effects.
humiliation for Legia Warsaw in the qualification rounds of the Europa League, where they were smashed, obliterated. What's the word? I don't know. We need a word strong enough to paint a picture
Dumped
here.
unceremoniously.
It's always dumped unceremoniously. Isn't it? Dumped out.
Have you been dumped
By
ceremoniously?
the champions of Luxembourg. So the Polish champions dumped out unceremoniously by the champions of Luxembourg. All credit to them. I'm sure they deserve the victory, but come on, Luxembourg, Dave, is there any other way to put this or portray this rather than a total humiliation?
I know I say this a lot, but who cares? They've dodged a bullet, really. They weren't going anywhere in the Europa League. They'd just be cannon fodder, meat to the slaughter for the bigger teams. There's nothing more painful than knowing you're out of a group and then having to play the last 3 matches, so I recommend they try and win the league.
That's a fair point, actually. I mean, they could be in sort of, part of Cyprus or, some former Soviet republic.
I reckon the Luxembourg League probably has semi-pros in there. These are guys like, firemen by day.
I think the national team probably has semi-pros in it.
I don't know about that. He says, without any evidence.
Follow up with something.
They're pretty good at banking, I think. Yeah.
Is it fair to say, now I'll defer to you, you guys have more knowledge on this than I do, but I'll defer to you, but isn't it fair to say that the Polish league is in this weird middle ground? They're not one of the big, credible leagues of Europe, Italy, Spain, etc. They're not one of the plucky underdogs from a tiny country. They're in the middle. So it's kind of hard to get an identity. They can't compete with the big leagues. They're always expected to beat the plucky underdogs from, Slovenia and Andorra. There's no glamour.
I think you underestimate the quality of the leagues and say Portugal or Holland, or even Denmark. You're comparing. You laugh about a team from Luxembourg, maybe they've got a few good players, a rich owner or something. It doesn't take much to tip the balance of football. Yeah. And that's why it's the world's game, John. The standards high everywhere, yeah? All around, these leagues, they're very good football players. And then, out of all of those tens of thousands, there's just maybe a few hundred that are just incredible. And they're the ones we see in the Champions League and in the Premier League at the higher end of it. But we shouldn't take away from the ability that, is on display
not taking
every
anything away
day.
from them. But this is becoming a bit of a cliche. The Polish champion going into European competitions with big plans, and then they get thrashed by a team from Armenia or the Norwegian second league.
You're not impressed. I get it.
It's always a really embarrassing exit.
But look, they've no chance of really going anywhere, even if they qualify, John. And it's a group stage always. It's not like you're into a straight knockout. It's a bit of a slog. I mean,
the other note from the world of football: the first post-World Cup FIFA rankings were published this week, with Poland in the 18th position, 18th spot.
Down 10 places.
Down 10 places, yeah. Mm-hmm. They were top 10 going into the World Cup, now 18th, which still seems generous to me, given their performance at the World Cup. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'll say what I always say when it comes to this. Everyone hates the FIFA World Ranking System, but nobody has a better idea. It's a difficult mathematical formula to establish, and I don't really have a better alternative. So I try and do what other people say they do, but don't do, which is just to ignore it.
I have no idea. I mean, when they were like Poland were ranked 8th going into the World Cup.
I think so, yeah.
Which was surprising. And I actually, my assumption was, and I think I mentioned this before, was that actually Poland did have a good qualification run in, didn't they, up to the World Cup? It's fair to say they had some good games and some good results. But I thought maybe it's to do with the fact that players in the national team are playing in very highly placed clubs in foreign leagues. And apparently this is complete rubbish. But, Lewandowski is considered one of the, certainly comfortably in the top 10 players in the world today. And there are several other regular Polish nationals who
I think you've stumbled on something genius there, right? You just use, say, the Opta rankings for whatever, is statistically the most successful teams in the world. Just do the fucking FIFA World Rankings off the back of that. Or you could have two sets of rankings. You could have the statistical rankings and FIFA's rankings, and we could all have a laugh, comparing the two. Josh, man, you're going to be rich, I'm telling you.
All right. Okay. Finally, I make a contribution to world football.
It's brilliant, though. Nobody's ever thought that. All the times I ask that question, people always say, they play too many friendlies, or in America they have it easy and all this. And it's like, well, okay, but what's your alternative? How do you put it all in a bracket? But we do have all this statistical information about where players are ranked, who scored and where they give you the transfer market rating of each player. You could collate all that data and come up with a new world ranking system. Look at this groundbreaking shit, man.
Well, there you have it. Catholic holidays, the Heat, horses, Dunkin Donuts, Polish football. What else do you want, people? That's everything. Don't forget, you can find the KrakCast on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, the New York Stock Exchange. We are everywhere. That's the news this week. We'll see you next time.